you're watching Al Jazeera. I'm Foliba Thibault, live in Doha. Coming up, Iran's economy battered by sanctions and now strangled by a war. Prices of medicine are rising because of the U.S. naval blockade. Large parts of southern Lebanon lie in ruins. New forced displacement orders from Israel signal more strikes ahead. An Israeli court extends the detention of activists from Spain and Brazil who were part of a flotilla trying to break the siege on Gaza.
I'm Jonah Hull in Shagan, Kazakhstan, at the heart of a former Soviet nuclear test site that exposed 1.5 million people to radioactive fallout.
More than 2 months after the U.S.-Israeli war started, its economic effects are being felt across Iran. Rising inflation and a soaring cost of living have hit families hard. Many are struggling to cope and layoffs are becoming more common. Al Jazeera's Tawhid Asadi reports from Tehran.
This shoe workshop in downtown Tehran once employed about 10 people. But business has been slow since the war began in February. And now all these seats are empty. Khashayar, whose father founded this workshop in 1970, says he had to lay off nearly all his workers.
Raw materials are the main problem. Prices have surged and some are scarce, limiting production. We once had people working here, now the workshop is nearly closed. This affects almost all businesses.
Many small businesses have been affected, and independent workers are also struggling to stay afloat. Sepehr is one of them. He is a music teacher and instrument maker. He has fewer students now, which means a lower income.
Art generally lacks a stable economic base, and we're no exception. In wartime, this worsens. Families cut non-essential spending like children's music classes, and instrument sales decline.
Iranian officials say U.S. and Israel airstrikes have damaged more than 23,000 commercial properties. According to early estimates, up to 2 million people have been pushed out of their jobs by layoffs, closures, or lack of work. Analysts say the real number could be even higher. Iran's new supreme leader has urged business owners to refrain from layoffs. It's not just brick-and-mortar businesses taking a hit. As internet disruptions continue, Iran's digital economy is also under pressure. Webz is a website builder company among those affected, cutting costs to remain viable.
The number of sales invoices we issued decreased by 50% compared to the same period last year. We have continued our business by reducing some expenses, such as eliminating additional servers to avoid layoffs.
Decades of international sanctions and domestic challenges have weighed heavily on Iran's economy. Unemployment has been a persistent problem. But 2 wars in less than a year have left people with fewer options for work while prices rise. With efforts to end the war stalled, many in Iran are worried the fighting could start again. That's clouding the hopes the job market will recover soon. Tawhid Asadi, Al Jazeera, Tehran.
Well, decades of sanctions have not only weakened Iran's economy and infrastructure, but they've also forced it to produce most of its own medicines. During the war, U.S. and Israeli strikes repeatedly hit Iran's healthcare system, and that included the largest pharmaceutical companies in Tehran. Now, the U.S. blockade of Iran's ports is making the situation worse. Prices of medicines have surged. Some have doubled, while others have increased by up to 1,000%. Because of shortages in essential ingredients and materials. Officials say up to 20% of medications have changed in price, and reports indicate there are shortages of medicines to treat chronic and infectious diseases, as well as many other health concerns. Well, joining us now to discuss this is Grigor Simonyan, who's the head of mission in Iran for Doctors Without Borders, MSF. He's joining us from Tehran. Thank you so much for being with us. Iran, we know, relies heavily on local drug manufacturing, which is now severely disrupted. What is missing? What essential medicines are in short supply, and how are you able to bridge the gap?
Thank you for having me. Yes, indeed, medicine, and not only medicine, but also medical equipment, biomedical equipment are the main things that we see are facing shortages. Throughout the years, also sanctions have impacted the full supply chain, and the conflict has exacerbated the situation even further. Doctors Without Borders, MSF, works on primary level, and we have been heavily relying on locally produced medicine that we find on our experience also harder and harder to obtain from suppliers. And recently we had to do international importations as well.
Yeah. So what shortages, what do these shortages mean in terms of treating people on a daily basis?
As I said, Doctors Without Borders is focusing on mostly primary healthcare. So the medicines and diagnostic equipment, biomedical equipment that I said, it's difficult to say in a wider scale towards specific medicines. But we get requests not only for medicines, but we also get requests of equipment, vaccinations. All of it can come into effect as the shortages are becoming more palpable.
Right. It's not just the shortages, but hospitals, clinics and ambulances were also hit during the war. Well, what's the operational status of major trauma centers today, not just in Tehran, but other cities where I understand you've been able to travel to? How are they managing?
Healthcare system has been quite sufficient and covering the needs even with locally manufactured. But the disruption of war goes beyond it. The supply chains in general are being affected. That puts a heavier pressure. Of course, the cost of the medicine has also increased, and we notice it. The services that we're providing is certainly free of charge, but we see more and more patients coming to our clinics. We noticed especially the surge since the ceasefire has been announced, as patients feel very uncertain on what's going to happen next. And we had a big increase in the number of consultations during this period. The uncertainty is certainly nerve-wracking for the patients too.
Indeed, a great deal of uncertainty. And with the war approaching 3 months now, what is your biggest need on the ground right now? What do people need the most?
As the short-term and long-term needs, if I were to specify, the primary healthcare is what Doctors Without Borders found more necessary at this moment, as the Ministry of Health has been focusing more on critical care, surgeries, war wounded, whereas the patients still need to address non-communicable conditions, diseases, non-communicable diseases. So this is the gap that we have identified and we focused, but also not to forget about the mental health, which doesn't seem to be the priority right now, but it will turn into a priority with time to come.
Thank you so much for speaking to us about this. Grigor Simonyan, Head of Mission for Doctors Without Borders in Iran, MSF. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
In other developments, the U.S. is sending more military assets to the region despite efforts by Pakistani mediators to facilitate talks with Iran. A third U.S. aircraft carrier has arrived in what CENTCOM describes as its area of responsibility. Thousands of military personnel and dozens of fighter jets are aboard the USS George H.W. Bush. President Trump says he is reviewing the details of Iran's proposal to end the war, but that Tehran has not paid a, quote, big enough price.
Doing very well with regard to Iran. Again, they want to make a deal. They're decimated. They're having a hard time figuring out who their leader is. They don't know who their leader is because their leader is gone. Their former leader, Khomeini. But we'll see. If we left right now, it would take them 20 years to rebuild. But we're not leaving right now. We're going to do it so nobody has to go back in 2 years or 5 years. They told me about the concept of the deal. They're going to give me the exact wording now.
The Trump administration has approved more than $8.6 billion in arms sales to Middle Eastern allies, including Israel, Kuwait, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio forced the deal through to allow the immediate sale of the equipment. The move marks the third time the administration has bypassed standard congressional approval, drawing criticism from Democrats. Lina Abu Akleh explains.
The Trump administration has bypassed Congress to approve $8.6 billion in weapons sales to its allies in the Middle East. The State Department said emergency circumstances made it necessary to fast-track the sales. The military sales to Israel, Qatar, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates are focused on air defense and precision strike capabilities. That follows the joint U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran in February, when Tehran retaliated against Israel and Gulf states that host U.S. military bases. Many were hit with drones and missiles. Now let's break down these arms sales. Qatar will buy an advanced precision kill weapon system and restock its Patriot air and missile defense system at a cost of nearly $5 billion. Patriot systems are used to intercept incoming strikes and are among the most advanced defense equipment in the U.S. military arsenal. On the other hand, the advanced precision kill weapon system is used to convert unguided rockets into precision-guided munitions. The U.S. has approved the sales of that system to Israel, worth at least $992 million, and to the UAE at nearly $148 million. Kuwait, on the other hand, is set to purchase battle command systems for $2.5 billion to improve its air defense detection with radar. The U.S. says its sales are in line with its foreign policy and national security objectives. But as a permanent deal to end the Iran war has so far been elusive, Gulf countries and other states in the region remain wary of the possibility that fighting could resume.
Joining us to unpack this is retired U.S. General Mark Kimmitt, also a former Assistant Secretary of State for Political and Military Affairs. Thank you so much, General, for being with us again. So are these arms sales to Gulf allies primarily about restocking and reassuring them after February's attacks, or are they part of a broader preparation for a possible next phase in the Iran conflict?
Yeah, I think it's really quite a bit of both. The Patriot sales are not only to resupply what have already been expended in this war so far, but also perhaps because there have been some gaps noted in the countries where some of the rockets got through, they may want to have some more of their own to defend their own countries. The Advanced Precision Kill Weapon Systems, the APKWS, is a lighter version of a Joint Direct Attack munition. It's basically a precision weapon, smaller than is normally used. You can use it with large numbers, and so it's cheaper and easier to use. So it's a combination of just simply resupplying for what's been used in the war and preparing for any future operations.
Right. Tell us more about what's being sold. There's a heavy focus, it seems, on air defense and precision strike systems. How do those improve the Gulf's stability to withstand Iranian missiles and drone attacks?
Well, that's what the air defense systems do. The Patriot is primarily there to knock down drones, missiles, and aircraft. But of course, the Iranian aircraft there are none. The APKWS, rather than being a defensive capability against Iranian rockets and missiles, is an offensive capability in case they need to go conduct military operations, air operations against any enemy in the future.
At the same time, we're seeing U.S. reinforcements in the region, the U.S. sending more military assets despite the diplomacy is still ongoing. What does that indicate, the additional deployment indicate about the U.S.'s intent right now?
Well, to use a term from show business, as they've often said, we can do this the hard way or we can do this the easy way. Diplomacy is the easy way, but the United States is prepared to do it the hard way rather than negotiate, compel a decision out of Iran.
So if diplomacy fails, what would success then look like for the U.S. and its allies militarily in the region?
Well, the military is only part of the solution. Success for the United States goes back to something that started this war: the nuclear program, ballistic missile program, and the proxy program. All these other side, as President Trump would say, these diversions, Strait of Hormuz, and other issues like that. Success are the core three issues that have been the same three issues for every president since the discovery of the illegal Iranian nuclear program. Cannot have a ballistic missile inventory that is more than simply defending its country, can't have a nuclear program, which is a threat to the region and to the world, and can't have proxy operations destabilizing governments around the region.
Thank you so much, General, for your insight. As always, very good to talk to you about this. General Mark Kimmitt joining us here in Doha. Now, meanwhile, Iran is signaling a tougher stance on the Strait of Hormuz. Deputy Parliament Speaker Ali Nighzad says Tehran is drafting a law that would permanently deny transit rights to hostile countries.
Under the law that will be adopted, vessels belonging to the Zionist regime will under no circumstances be allowed to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Hostile countries headed by the United States will also not have the right of passage. Other vessels wishing to transit will do so under the law we enact and with authorization obtained from the Commander-in-Chief and placed at the disposal of our armed forces.
Well, let's speak to Abbas Aslani about this. He's a senior research fellow at the Center for Middle East Strategic Studies and is joining us from Tehran. So Iran has a proposal on the table to end the war, which the Americans say they're studying. But at the same time, we're hearing from the parliament speaker there that it's drafting a law that would permanently deny transit rights to some countries through the Strait of Hormuz. So, what concessions, if any, is Tehran making at this stage?
Well, I think Iran tried to decouple issues, those ones which were, within access, in order to find a middle ground and reach let's say, a potential accord between the two sides. This could somehow create a situation whereby, they can step by step trust each other in order to see a process whereby they can go ahead with action in return for an action from the other side. And that's why, ending the war and reopening the Strait of Hormuz, as well as lifting the naval blockade, could be considering the core, parts of this likely agreement. And what I can see of is that, the Strait of Hormuz could reopen, return to the, status it had before the war, but maybe the management methods or protocols might differ, and a new management, protocols might be adopted by Iran, and this can somehow create a situation whereby, the two sides, at least Iran, can believe that the United States is serious about clinching an agreement with Iran. Then they can discuss the nuclear issue and the lifting of the sanctions. On the nuclear issue, Iran thinks that if the intent is there, they are open to transparency, to inspections, or the middle ground could be that if the United States wants to share that Iran is not acquiring a nuclear weapon, so that can be somehow secured and guaranteed by the methods and the tools that they can have through IAEA or some concessions on the nuclear field.
So what concessions precisely, Abbas Aslani, what concessions